My name is Fernando Reimers, and in this second presentation, I want to talk about the role of curriculum and collaboration to educate global citizens so that at the end of this pandemic, we have an education renaissance and not the alternatives, so that we can actually cause a Medici effect in the middle of this pandemic. I want to talk about the 3 curriculum resources that I have developed with my collaborators in the context of the Global Education Innovation Initiative aligned with the UN Sustainable Development Goals to help students build the competencies that could help us achieve those goals. One of the things that I have learned in this work is that in order for educational change to actually succeed at transforming the culture of education, it is very important for very many different people to communicate. And in order to communicate, it's fundamental to understand that others may not see the world the way we do, that we each see the world through a frame, and it's important to be aware of what those different frames are so we can have better communication and better collaboration. 5 years ago, there was an article published in the Journal of the American Academy of Sciences which showed that people that spoke 2 languages were able to see the world differently. The picture that you see in front of you was shown to a group of people who were native German speakers. And when they were asked what did they see here, their responses were more likely to focus on where the destination of this woman. In contrast, when a group of native English speakers was shown this picture, their responses focused primarily on the journey of this woman. But when people who spoke both languages were shown the same picture, their responses addressed both the journey and the destination of that woman. And this experiment suggests that indeed the language that we speak shapes how we see the world. It's an idea that the wonderful writer of the Enlightenment, Goethe, put forth centuries ago when he said that the person who speaks only one language sees the world with one eye. And the same is true for other frameworks that can help us make sense of reality. So about 9 years ago, I began to work with a group of my graduate students to see how we could go from big ambitious goals, such as the Millennium Development Goals at the time, or such as the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, or such as the main global risks identified by the World Economic Forum in the annual Global Risk Assessment Framework, how we could go from those goals to asking the question of what does a graduate of schools, of high school, need to know, be able to do and care about in order to bring this world about. And through that simple process, we developed an ambitious and rigorous curriculum which we called the World Course. And the World Course was adopted by a number of schools. The first edition of the book sold about 20,000 copies in about a year, was translated into multiple languages, including Portuguese, and many people tried to implement that curriculum. What were the basic principles that we used in developing it? The first one is that it was very important to begin with real clarity of the end goal. In the book Alice in Wonderland, there is a chapter in that book where Alice comes to a crossroad and she finds the cat sitting on a tree who asks her, "Which way do you want to go, east or west?" And Alice says, "East or west, it doesn't matter. It's all the same to me." And the cat replies, "If you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there." And that principle, that clarity of purpose, is fundamental, is nowhere more important than in education. I would argue that there is no way we could teach, which is a planful, intentional activity, without clarity of goals. But I would also add that it's very important for those goals to be ambitious. The goal shouldn't be to help kids gain one skill or another skill. The goal should be to empower that person to live well, to have the skills so that they can become architects of their own lives and so that they can collaborate with others in building a better world. And so that was one principle that we adopted in the curriculum. We said, how about if we take these goals, such as how do we build a world without poverty, and use that as the North Star? The second principle we adopted in that curriculum is that it's very important to engage students in projects where they have the opportunity to solve problems and to develop knowledge that becomes personal knowledge. Engage them in experiences that are extended and provide them deep opportunities to develop insights that are their own. There's a very big difference between learning to contemplate the world and learning to change it. And while it may be possible that we can learn a few things about the world, reading books or having someone tell us things, if we're going to learn to change the world, we have to engage in changing the world. I've just finished a book on education on climate change, and I've been reviewing research that shows what is most important to help students become active bystanders who actually engage in activities that can slow down climate change. And it isn't just knowledge. Knowledge is important. Knowledge has the effect, if you actually study what's happening with climate change, of causing people to worry. But if you only have knowledge, for some people, the most natural response is to be so overwhelmed by the problem that they decide to do nothing. And they become very cynical, alienated. But if you combine knowledge and worry with hope, then people discover that they can make a difference. And one of the things that helps people have hope is to see pathways, is to see small steps that are within reach that brings them there. And that's what we try to do with this curriculum. Engage students in projects that help them take small steps from which they could learn. The basic notion was that we learn a lot from action, from our own actions. We did have a conception that had a broad view of the kinds of competencies that students needed, cognitive, but also skills, also attitudes. We also engage students with extended projects. Every year, every grade, students would produce a capstone, a serious performance of understanding of some significance, of some weight. This is very important because if you look at the evidence on how teachers teach around the world, the OECD conducts periodic surveys where they ask teachers, how do they teach? And they ask students what kind of experience do they have in their classes. If you look at the last survey, the TALIS survey, you realize that only a very small percentage of the teachers engage their students in any activity that takes more than a week. And when you think about how do you build the resiliency, the grit, the perseverance, the persistence that is going to be necessary to transform the world, to build a renaissance after this pandemic, it is going to require effort. So effort is like a muscle. It requires expertise, requires 10,000 hours of practicing something. So that's what we build in this curriculum. Capstones that required sustained engagement of students.